episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SCS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, a show's so good, it happens every Friday, except last Friday, because we were covering the Charlie Adelson trial. Great Scott, it's your true crime Phil, and here they are, America's most respected detective, Fil Waters, who appears to not be in a Hawaiian shirt today for some reason. We'll ask why, because he's no longer on the Big Island. And then you've got Scott Duffy, former FBI supervisory agent out of the Delaware office, who is also a Commonwealth of PA police officer for 5.5 years. Of course, Fil Waters owns Kindred Spirits Investigations. He was a Houston homicide detective for many, many years, and was the star of the show The Interrogator that he wishes was called The Interview Room. Fil Waters, once you leave the Big Island, no more Hawaiian shirts?
No, I'm in I'm in the real world now, so I dress appropriate to my presence in Texas. And I'm in my office here in the Woodlands, Texas, in the beautiful Woodlands, Texas.
And how come there's no cowboy hat then? There should be a cowboy hat.
Well, I have my cowboy art is behind me there, and have some other over here. And then, of course, I have, that's the shot from the third floor lanai in my house in Hawaii. So, and then this is a moon picture of in Hawaii. So I have it around me, but here we are.
Fil Waters, I know it's bittersweet. You're back home, but you're no longer in the Big Island. Are you feeling a touch blue, if you would?
Oh, the minute the plane touches down in Intercontinental, I'm counting the days that we're heading back. So there you go.
You'll be there soon enough. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. There have been a lot of emails flying around. Did you give Nugget one final kiss goodbye on her muzzle?
I did. And of course, that was, that's always bittersweet, leaving that puppy dog behind. But my niece is there and will be there until December. And then my brother was over there for the last week. And so they enjoyed Nugget's company. And so we're in good shape. But she's kind of coming and going now. My brother told me that she was gone for a couple of days and then she showed back up. So I don't know if they're restricting her movement or she's breaking out, to get where she wants to be. But
is this brother John who I met? Is this your only brother?
Yeah. Yeah, you met him. That's right.
Yeah. Love John Waters. Great guy. Scott Duffy, didn't see you for a week. You look bundled up. Temperatures are dropping there. The sick kind of person that I am, I have a TuneIn radio app. It's called TuneIn. I'm a radiophile. I love radio. And since I know the temperatures are dropping in New York, my hometown, obviously New Jersey, my home state, I decided I would listen to WCBS radio, News Radio 88, just to hear the traffic and the weather. And it was a low of 49. Don't want to rub it in, but it's about 84 in Miami today. It's a little hot. How are you doing with the temperature dip there in Philadelphia?
It's nice. It's probably raining. No sun today, but yeah, I enjoy the fall 50s and 60s, so there's no complaints here, except when it's raining. But yeah,
ever the optimist, Scott Duffy. I get what is known as SAD, or seasonal affect disorder. I hate rainy days. It was raining yesterday. Ethel refused to get off of the chair. She finally switched from one chair to another chair. I posted that on Instagram on Surviving the Survivor. It was raining, and she looked at me like I was crazy because I tried to get her to go outside. She wasn't having it. Quick reminder, you can support us at Patreon, YouTube. I understand times are tough. You can't do that. Please give us 5 stars. And if you're in the car, listen to us on audio. We're everywhere podcasts can be listened to. Helps us greatly. Before we get kicking here, I'm feeling, by the way, shout out to Cindy Hollenbeck, who I've been speaking with. She's in the Moscow-Pullman area. Frankie Figs chiming in here. I cannot believe it has been a year since these kids were murdered. This Monday marks 1 year. Of course, the victims are Kaylee Gonzalez, 21, her best friend, Maddie Mogan, 21. You have Xana Kernodle, who was dating Ethan Chapin, both of them 20 years old. Horrific, horrible, tragic story. Fil Waters, this trial is now, according to the court, delayed indefinitely. We're going to talk a little bit about the latest news, but what does that do to a case when there is no trial date?
Have we been given any reasons why it's been delayed? Did they give any? Who's releasing the information, by the way? The DA's
This is the
office?
court. Well, this is the court. And yeah, you know, there's just been a lot of motions within the court. As we know, the defense tried to get the indictment thrown out. That was a Hail Mary that didn't work, but there's just been a lot of motions and a lot of issues with DNA. And so now the court has basically said, and by the way, the trial was set to kick off this month or last month, October. What month is this? It's November. So it was set to start in October, I believe. But now there's no date. So, you know, what does that do, I guess, to you, to the morale of investigators? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? Is it give them more time to investigate?
Well, you know, my experience has been when it comes to trial that when the frustration is for the detectives is we're just not getting it done. The detectives should be prepared, as I was, to go to trial. And we meet with the prosecutors and we formulate what the scope of the questions will be and so forth and so on, and what my testimony is going to be. And that's the same thing that's happening here. Most of these delays are going to be, it would appear, created by motions that the defense is filing and trying to muddy the waters and you know, get indictments. That was, I mean, they're doing everything they can do, which tells me that the defense is very concerned about the scope of the evidence that the prosecution has. And so it does tend to wear down the prosecution, especially if they are ready to go. It's just kind of an annoyance. But any kind of a delay with something like this, especially this complicated and this high profile, it wears on both sides of this thing, and it wears on them in every way possible. I know when I had big cases that were kind of getting batted around like this, you know, you get pumped up and you think you're going, then all of a sudden they tell you, no, it's over with. It's not going to happen. And it's a letdown, you know. I mean, it's this constant up and down thing is not good. But when it comes down to it, when it finally does happen, it's gonna happen. Everybody will be on their game, and it'll happen. But it's just it just wears thin with everybody involved, and of course, the public is clamoring for, you know, this thing to go to trial so they can all, you know, see what happens and so forth and so on. So it does have an effect, but it'll come around. It'll be all right. I had a case that just recently closed, and it was an old case of mine from Houston, and that thing it took almost 7 years for that to be resolved. So this stuff happens.
Is that a Kindred Spirits Investigations hoodie?
No, it's a shirt.
It's a shirt?
I don't wear hoodies.
Looks like a hoodie to me.
Scott can wear FBI hoodies. I do not wear hoodies.
Oh, but that's but it is a Kindred Spirits Investigations logo. It's tough to tell on this from this vantage point. Also, Phil, I'm curious, are you in an office? Because I see people walking by over your left shoulder. Or are you in your...
I am in an office. I'm in a location in an office building, and where I am is called the Work Lodge, and it is kind of a honeycomb setup where you have all different sizes and of offices. And I've been here for almost 6 years. I know the owner, and just a great environment, and it's just a really, really great place to work. And it's got meeting rooms and all the amenities. I mean, the stuff that I don't have to go out and acquire myself. So it's, it's really a nice setup.
Very good. This is by the way, I'm going to get the hate mail already. I haven't even asked Scott a question yet, but this question is for Phil. So the reason we weren't on last week, twofold. Fil Waters traveling back from the Big Island, but it was also in Tallahassee covering the Charlie Adelson trial. He is a Florida dentist, now a periodontist, now a convicted killer. He was convicted by a jury of his peers. Fil Waters, he liked fast cars and fast women, dated a lot of strippers, and he had a Ferrari with the license plate Maestro, and he's now going to state prison. Would you be interested in purchasing his Ferrari? Don Hagerman would like to know.
What model is it? You know?
I have no idea. Don, if you happen to know, let us know, and I will let Phil know. Look at this comment. Scott Duffy, you handle drugs as part of your job in the FBI. You know crack cocaine is highly addictive. She says, I'm on vacation and it's my birthday yet. Here I am watching. What the hell is wrong with me? Scott Duffy, I had a Latin King gang member. They said it's better to be.
Well, let me interrupt. Let me get my first interruption in.
Please.
So happy birthday to Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
A happy 248th birthday to the United States Marine Corps. Semper Fi. Hoorah to all those Marines out there.
Very nice. Are you allowed to, if you're not a Marine, am I allowed to say the SF word even? What you just said?
I will allow you to say it, yes. Because I know your heart's in the right place.
Yeah, Semper Fi, all you Marines. Thank you for your service. Thank you to Fil Waters. Appreciate that. Tough job, man. It's a tough job defending this country. Scott Duffy, any birthday wishes or advice about her STS addiction? Is it safer, in your opinion, than crack cocaine or methamphetamine?
This could be worse because, it's highly addictive. That's why. And, it's so happy birthday, Lisa. Fantastic. What a great addiction to have. So hopefully many, many more addicts out there are watching along with you.
Martha Nicholson. Okay, Phil, you and your wife will have to kidnap Nugget. I do not think STS Nation can handle losing Nugget. Glad you're back in the Republic of Texas. So,
well, we were reunited with my Poppy dog, so we're not dogless. But and Poppy, it was great to see Poppy. She went, she did her whoop whoops and all that helicopter stuff when she saw us. So it was awesome.
Look at this question, Scott. By the way, happy Veterans Day, Phil, from Lindsay Shea to all the veterans.
That's tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay.
And my kids were asking me what is Veterans Day, and I told them it is for people like Fil Waters who served their nation. Martha, oh, sorry, I just cut that off. We'll put Tolly back in a minute. Scott, can't you enlist the services of the FBI to airlift Nugget to Houston? Can you make some calls?
Yeah, we can arrange that. Absolutely.
There's Tolly in war-torn Israel right now. My STS fam, Joel COE, thank you all for caring, writing me, and just for being you. It means the world to me. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm so blessed to be part of this community, and I love you all dearly. Right back at you, Tolly. Always say best guest, better community, and horrific what's going on in Israel all around. Innocent people are dying as a result of these terrorists, Hamas, and what's happening to the Palestinian people is horrific. But the United States was attacked by terrorists in the way that Israel was. I think the United States would be defending themselves. Black Widower. How was Bill Burr? I saw comedian Bill Burr last night with the COE. He is literally, my throat hurts. I was laughing so hard. If you guys have not seen Bill Burr and you ever have the opportunity to see him, he's got a movie on Netflix now called Old Dads. I felt better because he's an older dad than me. He's 55 with a 3-year-old. And he did a whole bit on the submersible. And I was literally doubled over crying, which he then morphs into why white people make the mistake of climbing Mount Everest. And it was unbelievably funny. The guy's once in a generation comedic talent. Check out Bill Burr. Scott Duffy. He should pay me. He should pay me for that, Bill Burr. Scott Duffy. The FBI is in the headlines as it relates to the Moscow murders and Bryan Kohberger. Believe it or not, they were back at his home on King Road. They were there to reportedly collect more evidence. They were taking room measurements and doing 3D modeling. Two-part question. They were talking about tearing this house down. How would they do this if it was torn down? And why are they back there?
Well, that's exactly why Phil and I have been talking, the difference about leveling something. So it's not where all the gawkers are coming out, but at the same time, there is or could be a possibility that the jury would like to at least approach it if by one of those jury vans and whatnot. So, so this is where the positive is. Something didn't take place, and my guess is the services of the FBI's evidence response team was called upon to do they'll go ahead and map that place out, every inch, every corner, be videotaped, and then you'll be able to, with all the software that's out there, be able to create a 3D, almost like these realtors using these 3D tours. And so that will be more than likely utilized in court. And, with regards to that, going back into, I don't know if they didn't have the permissions of the current owner, they would have to, again, get another search warrant to be able to go in there and utilize all that. So it's making sure you've dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, and if they didn't have a 3D version of it, they are going to now.
Look at this, McSpunky. He's addicted to giving out Surviving the Survivor memberships, and we love him for it. Just donated 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships on what is almost Veterans Day. So there you go. Look at this. Ruthless. I love Ruthless. She's kind of somewhat new, but she's a friend of the show now. I was watching from an Egyptian beach this week. I'm now in cold England, shivering. You weren't in Sharm el Sheikh, were you, Ruthless? I was there many years ago. It's down by the Red Sea. It's a beautiful place on the Egyptian side. Cindy Hollenbeck says, I love Bill Burr. He's so funny. He is hilarious. The bit he did about you never want to laugh at the expense of other people dying, but he just started talking about the submersible, and I couldn't control myself. Scott Duffy, the question must be asked. This murder happened a year ago. They basically arrested Bryan Kohberger in December. Why do all these measurements now? Why didn't they do it 2 months ago or 3 months ago or 4 months ago? I know it's annoying, but that's my job as a reporter, which I'm no longer really a reporter, but I will still ask the question.
Those are good questions, and I would have assumed that all that was done. And so it's possible now that you have what at least what you're hearing, a long delay into scheduling a new trial date, right? Because we do not have a trial date. It's possible that as this moves further and further away, that it would be difficult to not level or destroy this place. And so as we get further and further, if the current owners are trying to level this place, then it's possible that at the very least we will have had a 3D all the measurements. So this way, any question that's going to be asked within the courtroom and trying to give jurors the real feel of what it's like to be in there, that these 3D pictures would be able to be utilized in absence of a jury being able to go to the actual site in the event that it is leveled. You can stave it off for some time, but if we start to get into potentially another 6 months, if not longer, and the current owners are fighting to level it, then at least now you have all the at least the next best thing.
Scott Duffy, I could not help but notice you're not wearing glasses. How come? Oh, put them on. Put them on. Put them on. STS, do you want him with glasses or sans glasses? I think it's with. Another one here from Jammin. Thank you for your service, Phil. Phil, they wanted to demolish his home. We were just talking about it, but now people are saying, thankfully, they didn't do it. And this 3D modeling could also potentially spare the future jurors a visit to 1122 King Road. How do you feel about that, about modeling potentially replacing an actual visit? And are you breathing a sigh of relief that this house was not demolished as they once wanted it to be?
Well, to answer your last question first, no, I'm not agonized about it either way. I just think my recollection is when we were talking about this, when there was a discussion about raising the thing and taking it to the ground, that it seems like there was some decision or direction given either by the DA's office or by the court. And I think the defense did not want the house taken down as well. So I think there were some decisions made within the confines of the court to not demolish this house and my guess was, as Scott's already talked about, was that they may want to take the jury to the scene, they being the defense. And I would not be surprised at all if that's what they end up doing. Now, the prosecution, if it were I would get ahead of that, and I would be the one to take the jurors to the scene. So, but again, that's all going to be part of whatever the strategy is that the prosecution further develops. But so I don't think it's they're being back in there to do measurements. That's a little odd, but perhaps they're just confirming what they've already done, and they just want to make sure that they've got the most accurate measurements at the scene.
Kaz Loves Cakes coming to us, I believe, from Scotland. Must be hell for the friends and families having it dragged out like this. I can't imagine that it's not hell. Not hell. Linda Vergata, thank God they didn't take it down. Interesting last name. Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Uh-oh. Is that the Magnum PI theme? What is that?
It is. Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
Gets caught every time.
Well, I'm back here and I was rushing around and forgot to silence certain things.
I just imagine this for a moment, everyone. We finally are doing the Super Bowl halftime show. 100,000 screaming fans. We're at the 50-yard line on a specially built podium with my mother being rappelled down from a helicopter. All the speakers are working, and suddenly Phil's Magnum PI theme song goes off. It would be such a jolt to the halftime Super Bowl fans to hear that, but it would also be kind of funny. And that's why I do think that one day this show will be the Super Bowl halftime show. I've said it once, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Linda Vergata, thank God they didn't take it down, but what's fascinating about this comment is Karen Vergata was just identified as one of the Long Island serial killer victims. Linda, I hope there's not a relation, but if there is, let us know. Surviving the Survivor at gmail.com. Phil, I think that's pretty good of me. I'm becoming an investigator. I'm noticing little things like common last names. So you're rubbing off on me, Phil. You and Scott.
When you can snatch the pebble from our hand, grasshopper.
Yes, that's when I will know. Joel, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Judy gave Surviving the Survivor a shout out a bunch of times on last night's show. I love Judy, love her show. That guy, Ryan Fitzpatrick, said something a little demeaning about Jewish people, but I got to forgive the guy. He seems like a really good guy. Actually, he's a former best friend of Charlie Adelson. And he was on Judy Tsang's YouTube channel, Asian American Legal Focus. So check it out. I'm glad you guys saw it. And by the way, tonight, 2020, 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'm giving them a free plug. Our very own Tim Jansen and Brandy Churchwell will be on 2020. It's all about the Adelsons. Dateline's doing the Long Island serial killer. Which one are you watching? Let me know in the comments. Are you going to watch the Long Island serial killer case, or are you watching Charlie Adelson on ABC's 2020? Adam Malone's a cool dude. He's always tweeting at me. He gave me the nickname Rims for my Jiminy Glick glasses, Fil Waters, and he just says, glad to be here. I'm glad he's here with us. So, Scott Duffy, the University of Idaho released a statement, and it says, and I quote, they own the house, by the way, which is why they were releasing a statement. Visual displays take months to build and were not feasible under the timeline of an October trial. While the measurements and details needed to build a model were taken at the time of the initial investigation, the FBI is using this extended trial timeline to gather their own measurements and images now that the personal property has been removed from the premises. That's interesting. So they're doing it for their own, on their own time. What's the benefit of that, Scott Duffy?
They're doing nothing that's not in support of the prosecution. So there's nothing they're doing that's going to not be used or requested by the prosecution. I can't imagine the FBI is doing anything on their own with regards to this, because they are but they are a resource to facilitate the prosecution and whatnot. So I'm so you are talking about a year, but this is the time. And so I don't know if the weather's similar. If I remember, there was snow on the ground this time last year. So I don't know if there's snow on the ground. And so thereby, if there's going to be a defense question, well, you took those in the summertime or different time. Perhaps now they're like, okay, maybe they do have all of this imaging, but now they want to redo it at what would be the same time frame. So my guess is they're just really getting into every aspect of what the defense can throw at them and be able to say, we have an answer.
Scott,
I think to add to that, I think that perhaps because the FBI has to be requested to come into these types of investigations, and they were, the prosecutors may have wanted the FBI to go back in there and do measurements to at least bring an objective view. Having the detectives at Moscow PD, come in there and do those measurements would maybe not have the impact that the prosecution wants to have by having the FBI come in there and make those measurements themselves. It kind of adds a little bit of, in my view, it adds a little bit of objectivity to the overall strategy of working the scene.
By the way, there's a kind of a controversial comment, and you'll find out why, from Jason Truth that I'm going to bring to Phil's attention. But first, Scott Duffy, Misty May, the killers in this Idaho murders, adrenaline was pumping. Does that mean the killer could do more killing in a short period of time? What say you, Scott Duffy? Does adrenaline help you become, in essence, a more effective killer?
That is a good question. It's, what you're talking about, definitely, but also when the adrenaline is up, you're not aware as much, and so this tunnel vision, just like somebody on law enforcement side, if they're involved in an active shooter, what is they're laser focused in on a target, and many of the senses that otherwise we utilize every day get focused into what is needed, and that could be, for example, your eyesight. So I would imagine very much like here, it's a fantasy, it's a fantasy, it's a fantasy. We know there are at least 12 times where Bryan Kohberger had got into that area, right, through GPS and whatnot, and so he's gearing up for this, and then finally on that night he's committed to it, and so your adrenaline is going, but then you become laser focused, and so yes, the adrenaline may very well help keep going with what you set out to do. But I'm not so sure if I'm reading the question right. It's not like, well, I intended with one, but because of my adrenaline, others. It's definitely something that could be used to his advantage. But at the same time, and I think that's what we in law enforcement rely upon, is their exit plan is not planned out as well as they thought, and because of adrenaline and all these other factors coming into place, they're just they make mistakes, and mistakes that law enforcement can detect, pick up as evidence, etc. So it's a good question, fantastic question.
Yeah. By the way, Ruthless says in London, my husband has just said, "Are you watching that channel with the trial stuff again?" and rolled his eyes. Ruthless, I bet you when your husband is at work, he is secretly watching STS on his cell phone on YouTube, and he's just in a closet about it publicly to you or privately to you or however to you. Fil Waters, this is sort of the inflammatory comment that I would like you to address from Jason Truth. Interesting last name. We do no victim shaming on this show, which is why I would like Fil to address this with his own wealth of experience. The most mysterious and crazy fact, but this is a point that's raised often. The most mysterious and crazy fact in this sad, brutal murder case is the fact that DM, she's one of the surviving roommates, chose not to call 911 for 8 hours. She makes an excuse that she was in shock. Come on. 5-year-olds have called 911. Fil Waters, you've handled all sorts of cases, not maybe quite of this magnitude, but very close. You have a wealth of experience. What is your response to Jason Truth?
Well, okay, you take this fact in isolation, and it doesn't tell the truth about what happened. And so this criticism of this witness, given the scope of what occurred and we don't know what she witnessed. I mean, we've heard a lot of stuff. We've heard a lot of talk. We know what was in some of the affidavit about a portion of what she saw. So until this thing goes to trial, and until the facts of the case, which lead to the truth about what happened in that house that morning, I think that it is disrespectful, and I think it is it doesn't further anything in this particular case, and to continue to speculate about this young lady that's been through this. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So addressing this in isolation and no disrespect to Jason asking the question, bringing it up. I'm just saying that I think everybody needs to back off and let's wait till the trial. And I would imagine that she is going to testify. So we'll know what happened when this thing comes to trial and it all starts getting put out there. So speculation, it really doesn't make any difference, except it's good fodder for those that want to continue to talk about it.
And I had J. Reuben Appleman on who wrote While Idaho Slept, the book, and he spoke to DM's father, I believe it was, who said she's having a very hard time and is going through all kinds of trauma therapy. Cindy Hollenbeck in the Pullman, Moscow area says, no shaming the roommate for not calling 911. We've been over this 100 times. We have to have empathy. We have no idea what went through her head. She was terrified, and I would have to agree with that. Scott Duffy, this is an interesting question from Michael Couture, friend of the show here. I've seen Dr. Ramsland. She, of course, wrote a book about BTK and has been in touch with him over the years and happened to teach Bryan Kohberger. I've seen Dr. Ramsland on this show. She has been on the show. This is before we were really true crime all the time, and learned that she taught Kohberger at one point. Curious to know if she might be a witness in court, Scott Duffy, and how her background knowledge could be used. Since she was a teacher, could she be subpoenaed here?
Yeah, she and others from his could be, and that's ultimately my belief would be detectives or those acting on behalf of the detectives, anyone that the detectives would have requested, like another agency, to go out and conduct interviews. My belief would be that anybody teaching in the criminal justice field would be interviewed and see what they know. For example, what papers did he write? Perhaps what doesn't make sense when you're reading a paper real time. Now all of a sudden you have a crime to go back on. There could be little things in there that just jump off the paper and say, wow, this was something that could be useful. So absolutely, as long as it's relevant, as long as they're between papers and what might have been said in the classroom or however he was going to class, it could have been through Zoom, and how he interacted with others could very well play a part. At least to have all them interviewed, and then of course it's going to be up for prosecution to say, hey, these statements would be relevant, even though they're not part of the actual crime.
Jason Truth says, didn't mean to victim shame. Dylan is a survivor. She's still a victim. Many have said this, listening to Phil now. Thanks. You're welcome. I wanted to address that since it does come up a lot. Look at this from Gretchen in Bergamo. My husband always asks me if I'm watching the Murder Channel ID. Again, this morning I tried to explain. I mostly gave that and Law and Crime up, Dan Abrams, because STS is so much smarter. Take that, Dan Abrams. I don't think Fil and Scott realized we actually beat Law and Crime with our numbers on the Charlie Adelson verdict. So I was very proud of that. And I took a little cheap shot at Dan Abrams. So come at Dan Abrams. What are you going to do? No, I like Dan Abrams.
Well, I hope you got your Adelson fix done.
It's
Joel,
out of the.
Yeah. I mean, it was getting annoying. It was all things Charlie Adelson. Oh my gosh, man. Get over it. Okay, the guy's convicted now. So are you good? Are we okay?
Hey, Phil, what's going on? Speaking of that, I mean, I was talking about this with my wife. I'm fixated on this because the thing I'm most fearful in life is state prison. And I want to distinguish that from federal prison. What's going on in Charlie Adelson? We had a Latin King gang member on this week, but what do you think's going on in his mind right now, knowing he's about to spend the rest of his natural life in a Florida state prison? Fil Waters.
He's probably going to want to get his rear end surgically sewn shut. Would be my take. I'm sure he's concerned about his, that area of his body. But look, I mean, this is a guy that, from all outside looking in terms of success and material things and things that we would call somebody successful in terms of however man defines that, it's all gone. He's going to get 3 hots and a cot, and for the rest of his life. So whether it's federal prison or state prison, it's prison. And I think he's he's going to be immersed in a world that he never, ever imagined he would be living in. So I'm sure he's very, very concerned about his future.
By the way, his defense theory was that he was extorted by the Latin King gang. That was the theory that the defense presented, and he ended up paying in payment plans, which was kind of laughable. But the irony is that the Latin King gang member we had on said the first thing that's going to happen to Charlie Adelson in prison is he's going to be extorted by gangs, including the Latin King. So it's actually going to come to fruition in prison. It's so scary. I can't even think about it. Cripley says, is Fil short for Fillmore, as in Millard Fillmore, my favorite president? Phil, would you like to explain the derivation of your name?
It is. And I was named after my grandfather, who was named after Millard Fillmore. He spelled his name with the 2 L's like Millard Fillmore did. I spell mine with 1. That's for whatever reason. That's how my parents put it on the birth certificate. And so, yes. And so Millard Fillmore, and I've never been able to, nobody's ever been able to answer the question as to why my grandfather was named Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore as president. I think he became president because I think Franklin Pierce died in office or something. And he was his vice president. He was a member of the Whig Party. He was from Buffalo, New York, by the way, and could not even garner the nomination when he finished the term for the to be elected, to run for president under the Whig Party. So he quit the Whig Party and he started his own party, and it was called the Know Nothing Party, which would apply very well to today's world. But the only thing that he did of really any significance while he was president, and this is kind of legend anyway, was that he is responsible for putting the first working toilet in the White House.
It's fascinating. That is fascinating. By the way, my grandfather's grandfather's name was Milton. I love that name, and Millard is not far off from Milton. So I don't know, if I have a grandchild, I'll have him call my grandchild Mill. How about that? We'll split.
Of course, that makes my initials. That makes my initials MF. So it's not what everybody's now thinking of. So it is Millard Fillmore, and if I might, I'll just tell you a funny story here. So when I was working patrol at North Shepherd in Houston, Texas, HPD, on our name tags, of course, we have our initials and our last names. Well, mine says MF Waters II. Of course, I would get guys that I would be talking to on the street, or I'd be arresting, and they'd look at my name tag and they'd see the initials MF, and they'd start laughing. And I'd say, nope, not what you're thinking of, but it can if you don't do what's right. So there was another officer there whose initials were, and this is a true story, whose initials were FU. And we tried to convince the roll call sergeant to let us ride together. And he would never let us ride together because he was scared to death that he would be getting a series of complaints about officers MF and FU. So we were never able to ride together, but it was just one of those funny ironies in law enforcement at Houston PD at North Shepherd Substation.
Interesting. Someone else was asking if you wanted Charlie's Ferrari. Super sticker here from Vicky Kennedy. Thank you, Vicky. Black Widower. She comes to us from the Republic of Ireland. She has a sharp tongue and sharp wit, and she's funny. And she says, my grandma's name was Cannonball, or granddad, I guess. I don't know. You left a letter out there, but I like that. Cannonball would be a great name. For those of you who are not accustomed to Fridays, it's off the rails. This is a typical Friday for the most part. We are going to talk about other big true crime stories of the week, which I have lined up, but we're going to finish out on these Bryan latest with the Moscow murders. Scott Duffy, one thing that's very interesting about this so far is they've been going back and forth about DNA. We know that there was DNA found on the knife sheath, and then the state was using IgG, investigative genetic genealogy, and that's how they allegedly tracked him down, or investigators, I should say, were using that. And then the defense said that they were going to contest some of the science related to the DNA found at the scene. But the thing that keeps jumping out at me, there's also 3 unidentified male DNA sequences found there. How problematic is that for the state? Because obviously the defense is going to say, look, we don't know who these 3 people are. Now, I will preface that with a caveat. I just watched, there's a very interesting doc, I wish I could remember the name, on Netflix right now about a horrific murder in, I want to say, Lynchburg, Virginia, 1985, 1986. They were kind of, what's the word? They were socialites. And this daughter and boyfriend at the time slashed these parents' throats. And at one point, there was some unidentified DNA found at the crime scene. It turned out there were partial profiles, et cetera, et cetera. Is that what we're going to find out here eventually, Scott, that these are partial profiles, or how problematic is that?
I don't think it's problematic. I think, and a good investigator, along with a great DNA expert, will be able to fill in those gaps. So think about going into not just an horrific crime scene, but the crime scene was a very popular, like any other college apartment. There's lots of people. And then, of course, once a crime scene has taken place, now you have medical personnel, the coroner, lots of investigators that are all there. And of course, you're supposed to have your protective suits and et cetera, so you're not contaminating or bringing anything that's not already there. So it all depends. For example, if this sheath is what was holding the murder weapon, and it is left behind, that's a great source, right? That's something that was brought to the crime scene, did not belong there. It's foreign to this apartment, to this house, and so thereby, you still need that. A jury needs to know what's to say that's the sheath of the murder weapon versus the sheath of somebody else, right? Then, and so you have to bring together that narration. And when you start testing for fingerprints or DNA, you're going to come across additional pieces that are just not tied to your suspect. And so you're going to have to create another story, and that's not going to come out until trial, to say what this is and why that was tested and why it doesn't come back to Bryan Kohberger, et cetera. And of course, to your point, is it possible that it is partial, and so thereby couldn't have gone any further with it? But my belief, like anything else, you explain the negatives with the positives, and to have additional pieces of evidence or DNA, it's something that's collected, something that shows it's tested. The defense will get a hold of it. They'll make it a red herring, like, aha, there's somebody else involved. But this is where it takes a good investigator to say that was tested, but here's the reason why it's not connected. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to come down to.
Lindsay Shea says it's an excellent documentary on Netflix. Lindsay, if you know the name, I forget the name because I just watch docs and I pay no attention. Let me know the name, but it was about a murder in Virginia in 1985 of very high profile couple. Misdemeanor OG, I'm not going to read this comment, but I'll let you read it. I taught a kid, and that was his name. True story. You can phonetically, that's because of Phil's MF and FU comment. Where is Phil, Scott? He seems to have disappeared on us.
He just took off.
Yeah, I think he's either buying a new Ferrari or his internets are giving him a hard time. Christy Gonzalez, she's the mother of Kaylee Gonzalez. May she rest in peace. Scott Duffy, she just spoke to Brian Enton, of course, of News Nation, a friend of the COEs and a friend of mine. Julie Frew says, Phil, come back. Phil, where are you? Let's see if you texted me. Hang on a sec. Did Phil text me? No, he did not text me. So maybe he is buying a Ferrari. By the way, we're still working on the Ellen Greenberg case. I just got an email from a text. Go ahead, Scott.
Did you see the text?
Oh no, I didn't.
A power cord got disconnected, so he needs to be back in.
Where is he? I don't see him. Tell me he's not in the waiting room.
Okay.
Tell me he has to go out and come back in. And I don't see a text. The mystery is growing. I might need the FBI here. Where the hell is this guy? We'll see if he comes back in. Everyone, hang tight. The suspense is building. Will Fil Waters get back into this episode of STS, or will he forever be banished? Dom's mom, meanwhile, gifted 5 memberships. Scott Duffy, till I see his face, I will continue with you. Christy Gonzalez.
Just a quick note: he is saying that he's in the waiting room. It's just.
Let me see. I can't. It says he's disconnected. I love handling technical issues on the air. I don't have a text from him. Scott Duffy, tell him to. Oh, here, hold on. Something's happening. Well, he just disappeared. That's a good sign, actually. Tell him to try to come back in, if you would.
Yes.
I could sing. The only song I know how to sing is Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's the only song I know the words to. Dom's mom, 725. She just gifted 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships. So cannot thank you guys enough when you do that. Again, we are working to get our audio numbers up. If you can give us a listen on audio platforms and or give us 5 stars, that would be great. This is the name of the woman I think was convicted in this crime, Elizabeth Haysom. That is the woman who was accused of that horrific crime in Virginia on that Netflix doc I was talking about. I see Fil Waters slowly emerging. There he is. There he is. Phil, can you hear us?
I can.
Beautiful. Great to have you back.
And I suddenly turned into the orange man, so I'm not sure what that's.
You've never looked better. Phil, I was saving this for you. We're wrapping up the Kohberger part of the show. Christy Gonzalez, she is back in the news. She and Steve Gonzalez, the parents of Kaylee Gonzalez. I know you don't particularly love them talking to the media. Well, she spoke to my friend Brian Enton, who's a better friend of the COEs than mine, but a friend of the COEs is a friend of mine. Of course, he's with News Nation. Coming up on the year since this happened, she spoke to Brian Enton. She says the worst part, obviously, is being in the same room with Bryan Kohberger and knowing what he's done. She went on to say, it makes me sick that he sits there in his suit and he sits there and taps his hands. She continued, I've never seen another murder, keep in mind he's not convicted yet, or whatever he is at this point in a case who's not in handcuffs, not in shackles, one or the other, or both, and in an orange, presumably jumpsuit, even though she didn't say that. What do you make of these comments? She's obviously, as we all would be, scarred by this, having a very hard time looking at him coming into the courtroom in this suit. How do you translate this?
Well, we all know how the Gonzaleses feel. We cannot comprehend what they're going through. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. I would prefer that Mr. Goncalves keep his comments to himself and between he and his wife. It doesn't serve. I'm telling you, this thing is going to go to a trial, evidently. We do not want jury nullification. We don't want things that he's saying affecting that trial and giving any kind of a doorway, a crack in the door to get some sort of appeal, as this being part of an appeal. If he's convicted, he's going to get an appeal anyway. But my heart goes out to him. They're in my prayers, but he just needs to discipline himself to keeping his mouth shut at this point. It's moving forward. We all know how he feels about the evildoer being or this defendant. For all those bedwetters out there, they're going to get upset about that. That this defendant, we all know how he feels. This is the way they do things in Idaho. This is, these guys, they don't all get, especially with these hearings, they're dressing this guy up for the express purpose of not having him in there in shackles and an orange suit. When it goes to trial, he will be dressed as he is now, as we see him. He's not going to be sitting there at the table wearing an orange suit and shackles. They're not going to do anything. Look, the guy gets a presumption of evidence, a presumption of innocence. That's the way the system works. They're not going to do anything, march him in there in any way that is going to prejudice the jury. So this constant making comments, to me, it doesn't further the process, and it could damage it in some way. And so, every murder trial I went to, every capital murder trial I went to, I'm going to tell you, I had some of the sleaziest looking people. This guy is clean cut anyway. But I'm telling you, I've had defendants that, they were turds. And tats all over them. And the gang stuff and just looked the part. And when I got to trial with them, I had a female defendant that was a member of one gang, and she was 15 years old at the time when she did it, and she juked the clique leader for MS-13, for an MS-13 group. One time, extraing them with a knife, and he was DRT, is dead right there. She had 15 years old, had the tats, had the talk, and wore the garb. The whole bit. There was no question interviewing her that she was what she was. When we got to trial, they cleaned and dipped her, and she looked like an ingenue. She was probably 16, 17 when we went to trial. I was just floored. A much more presentable, softer tone about her, had makeup on her whole look. It was amazing. So this is part of the process. This is what is done to give the defendant the opportunity. He doesn't have to prove he's not guilty. He doesn't have to do anything except be there under a presumption of innocence. So the prosecution has the burden to prove what he did, that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So again, getting back to the original question, I understand. I do. I understand his frustration. I've been through it with families from the detective side of it in trying to talk to those families and keep them calm. But it serves no purpose except it just fuels his anger. And again, we all understand it. I'm not trying to be critical of him as a person. I'm just saying that, gosh, please, just every time you get a microphone stuck in your face, just say, look, I've said what I've said. Nothing's changed. We're looking forward to a trial, and we hope that it's going to happen as soon as possible and be done. But he's gotten caught up in it, and again, I don't think it's serving the process well. So,
by the way, Lindsay Shea has given us the name of that documentary on Netflix, Till Murder Do Us Part. Really fascinating documentary. Highly recommend. Someone said Phil is having trouble with his interweb. Someone else said that Phil's shoes can't be filled. I agree with that. Play on words.
No, my back. I didn't hook the power cord in, and it was giving me the warning that it was about to shut down. So that's what it was.
Phil, do you wear your slippers in Houston?
I do when it's weather appropriate, but right now it is freaking cold and it's raining, and so I have to wear clothes. So that's I got to wear long pants and shoes, which is not my mode. But now yesterday I was in shorts and slippers, but today back to real clothes.
Phil, does dreary weather adversely affect your mood? Do you suffer from seasonal affect disorder the way I do?
No. I'm the same today. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, I have preferences, but as far as it affecting me, no, not really.
I thought you would say that. I thought you were a little tougher mentally than me, but I just had to ask anyway. TR says, I'm in Houston.
All right.
Maybe there you go. TR, tell us a little more about yourself. Maybe Phil will take you for a ride in his Ferrari. Black Widower, look at this. I love this comment. Nobody suffers like you, Joel, from Black Widower. You just had a different photo up 5 seconds ago. Now you have someone on what appears to be a jackass. Is that a jackass that your photo is? Look at this. Cindy Hollenbeck coming to us from the Pullman, Washington area. Joel, I lived in Bellingham, Washington. The sky was gray for 10 weeks. I hated it. You are my spirit animal. That's why I could never live in the Pacific Northwest for precisely that reason. No chance. Final two quotes here. These are sad. On keeping the house intact, Steve Gonzalez says, I knew in my heart what was best for those girls and Ethan, and I knew what was best was to keep that around until they did more, which is what they're doing now with the FBI there. There will be a point when I'll be like, let it go. And then they asked the mother about the home, 1122 King Road. And she said, Christy Gonzalez says, look, my daughter lived a happy life there. Yes, she was ultimately murdered there, but that was this much time. We have pictures of them in the house. When that house goes, it's going to be hard. You got to feel for parents. No matter what is going on, you got to feel for them. This is a horrific, horrific tragedy, and hopefully justice will be served. And now we move on to Lisk, the Long Island serial killer, and then we'll do some smaller stories to round out this great Scott, your true crime Phil. That's how we roll on Fridays. Scott Duffy, New York Newsday. I believe now it's just Newsday, but they broke this story this week that on Wednesday, Rex Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerip, who's now filed for divorce, that she visited him behind bars. A lawyer, Bob Massadino, a lawyer for her, confirmed this, saying, I can confirm that Asa did visit with Rex yesterday. I have no further comment. You're a former investigator. You're an FBI agent. What on earth do you think they were visiting about? Were they talking about the divorce? Some people are now, in light of what we have learned, about this swinger lifestyle, and she was there when some of these women apparently were in their home. Think that there might be more than meets the eye. What say you, Scott Duffy?
It could be all the above. It could be if they are both involved and so they're co-conspirators, it's better to go in person rather than be talking through phone calls and paper, which can ultimately be intercepted by law enforcement. So it would be smart if there's a co-conspiracy issue. And then it could be yeah, hey, I need those passwords, and only you have them. So it doesn't surprise me. I don't know what their life was like leading up to the very day of his arrest, when they're both in the dark, that he's being looked at and ready to be pounced on and arrested. So if their lives were whatever they were, happy-go-lucky, whatever, including everything that's been talked about, then her going back to him, even though she's filed for divorce, none of that surprises me. I mean, people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's not the last visit. So it doesn't strike me as being anything out of the ordinary whatsoever.
Fil Waters, could it be that she went there to tell him face to face, I hate your guts and you ruined my life?
Oh, I guess it's possible. Anything's possible, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's certainly a possibility. yeah.
So just so you all know, the jail spokesperson, a woman named Victoria DeStefano, she declined to comment about this visit. She says, and I quote here, I love bureaucrats, Phil. As per policy, we do not release the names of visitors, but I can confirm that Rex Schuerman received a visit yesterday. So it looks like she was there. As all inmates, he got a pat down. He was allowed a 1-hour visit. He was allowed to embrace at the beginning and the end of the visit. All inmates are searched after visits. That's when he got his pat down. The attorney for Rex Schuerman, Michael Brown, had no comment, but Fil Waters, maybe you can elaborate on this question a little more. Rodney Harrison is the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, and since we last talked, he offered his resignation, which it stunned people. Why leave now, just when this case is gaining steam? He said, serving as a Suffolk County Police Commissioner for the past 2 years was not only a privilege, but one of the greatest highlights of my law enforcement career, and that is because of all of you. And there's a question here from Misdemeanor OG. What's going to happen to the ongoing investigation now that the best commissioner, Rodney Harrison, has left? What happens? Why leave?
Well, I have no idea. That's the first I've heard of that. When did this happen?
Hey, we break news on I almost said on News Nation, but I forgot the name of my show. We break news on Surviving the Survivor.
When did this occur?
This happened within the last 10 days, I want to say. But really? We were busy, as you said, with Charlie Adelson. Yes. And I don't think we discussed it because you don't even know about it. But yeah, this just happened. It's very mysterious. If anyone has any more light to shed on this, please let us know in the comments section.
Now that you said this, my question would, of course, the big question is why? Why would he leave? I don't think at this, this misdemeanor's got this question here, what will happen to the ongoing investigation? That will continue. I think that the tone has been set and that will continue. But my curiosity is the why. And my thought is that he has been made an offer somewhere else for a lot more money. Would just be my guess. He may have got an opportunity somewhere. I would hope that it's not something nefarious, like he got caught, doing something. I hope it's nothing like that. I mean, this guy looks to be a pretty solid guy. So Um, I hope it is something where he was given an opportunity and he's moving a little further up the food chain.
The great Fil Waters once taught me big motives: money, sex, drugs. Maybe he did get a big paycheck to leave, and we're soon going to find out. Right now, it is a bit mysterious, and why you would leave, such a high-profile criminal investigation when you're the top cop doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we will find out soon enough. Scott Duffy, the New York Post, always does interesting work on talking to people that knew Rex Heuermann, and they spoke to a couple of coworkers, and they actually got this from Dateline, so credit to Dateline. They have a show, as I said, airing tonight about the Long Island serial killer. They spoke to a couple of former coworkers of him, I guess people who dealt with him, because he was an architect. He had his own private firm. And this one person named Jeffrey Street Armand described him as being very assertive, maybe even leaning to the point of being aggressive. A second coworker said she just didn't feel comfortable with him at all. She was like, I don't want to be in the office when he comes and picks up the check. He wasn't easy at all. And she went on to say that you just start to feel afraid of the world. From a legal standpoint, once this goes to trial, how important are these sort of character witnesses that will explain the feelings they felt? Is this something that will be allowed in even in a trial?
I don't. I mean, they can try. I'd be very surprised if they can bring in just. And typically, you would see that on the defense side when you're bringing in these character witnesses to say what a great guy and do anything, or what a great whatever. But these, you wouldn't bring those typically in. Let the evidence speak for itself, unless the only time I could see prosecution bringing in a witness like that is if he said something that equivalent to a confession at the water cooler or something. But yeah, getting the heebie-jeebies, and I don't. Those are. Granted, I would still be very surprised if law enforcement did not go out to speak with neighbors and colleagues, etc., to get an idea of the type of individual he is, and anything he might have said. And then, of course, did he give anything to anybody? It's amazing what you can gather from these people who may have absolutely no connection to a crime, but, for example, a cell number, an address, or whatever, something that law enforcement didn't have previously. They can then run and check leads, and it might take them somewhere that's necessary. But I don't see just those type of office banter conversations ever coming into. But if I could also say, I will say our newly elected City of Philadelphia mayor, she did announce that she will be announcing a new chief of police, a commissioner, before Thanksgiving. So it's, who knows?
Well, I just did a little Google search here on the good commissioner, and it looks like, I mean, he has stated that he's leaving to spend more time with his family, and there was a change in leadership at the county, at Suffolk County. The man that hired him is no longer there. There's another person replacing him, and I don't know if that was an election process or whatever that was, because we just had an election.
Yeah,
so
there's a new there was just a brand new Suffolk County executive, and you see here Jan says, or Jan,
yeah,
he just had elections.
That may be. I think this. He said up here that wasn't part of it. That he doesn't get involved in the politics, so forth and so on. I wouldn't be surprised if it had a little bit to do with it. But he says here, and this is a quote: "A lot of people think that I'm going to go into another law enforcement agency. That's not the case. I haven't committed myself to anybody or anything. Listen, if down the road, if something comes my way, and I'm sure God has a plan for me, I'll evaluate it with my family." So I'm sure that'll get a bunch of people going, because he actually believes that God has a plan for him. But as I do, as the rest of us. So he was there, and he did what he did, and it was a great benefit to Suffolk County, that agency, and the citizens there. and now he's decided to move on, and according to him, it's to spend more time with his family, and let's see what the Lord has in store for him for the future.
Audrey Kubelis, didn't his fundraising manager take some money? No, that was the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. I don't know what's going on with that, but that was not Rodney Harrison. Tali says, I'm so out of touch. I don't know what's happening in the cases lately. You have a war going on in Israel, Tali. We will cut you some slack. Make sure you and Henchy held in Jerusalem. Take care of yourselves. Johnny Supertramp says, new guy coming in, bringing in his own police commissioner. So there you go. Ned Smith, ever the skeptic as I am, the cynic. That's always the excuse when you were canned. Yeah, maybe he was canned. We don't know. We'll find out eventually. Rachel Wyatt says, very sad to see Harrison go. So this case, this is very interesting and intriguing to me, Fil Waters. Samantha Woll, she is this Detroit synagogue president who was murdered. 40 years old, big, bright smile, young woman. Well, police made an arrest. They have a suspect in custody, but they're not saying who he is, what he is, where he is. All they said is the person arrested in the murder of a well-known Detroit synagogue president is a male who has been moved from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Wayne County, which is where Detroit is. That's according to a source speaking to Local 4 News in Detroit. And then the police chief says, Fil Waters, while this is an encouraging development in our desire to bring closure for Miss Woll's family, it does not represent the conclusion of our work in this case. The details of the investigation will remain confidential at this time to ensure the integrity of the important steps that remain. Now, I, Phil, cannot recall a time where someone is arrested for a crime and they don't release a mugshot. They don't tell you the name. It's very odd to me. Obviously, we've got the war going on. Detroit is a very heavily populated Muslim area. This is the president of a synagogue. So there's obviously implications. They are saying it's not a hate crime. What do you make of this, Phil? Why so much secrecy?
Well, we only know what we know, right? So I when I saw this, when it first occurred, she was stabbed to death, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And so my first thought was, and given her position and so forth and so on, and who she was as a person, my first thought was this is going to be somehow related to the fact that she's Jewish. Now, the authorities came out, not a whole lot of time passed when they said that, to use your words here, this was not a hate crime, which would imply what? That it's not involving what we would think to be the usual suspects. However, the fact that they're not releasing any information about the arrested person. Now, I would think, unless they got some sort of a sealed indictment to arrest this person, if they went and filed a charge, that's public information. So the media could get right into the system there in Detroit and see what charges have been filed against what individual, and there would be a summary there of why that person was charged.
It's weird, though, because it doesn't seem to exist. I don't know why. Shivani is asking, Fil Waters, could the one arrested be underage? I mean, you've arrested people for capital murder who are underage.
Well, that's still that they may be, but I mean, my point is here is that the fact that they've arrested someone and there is no information that can be accessed in the system, like whatever the probable cause was on the charge sheet to arrest that person for that particular crime, that is a little mysterious. So my thinking is that they got a sealed indictment and they're not going to unseal it until they are at a place where, as the chief or whoever that was said, They don't want to compromise the investigation. And it's a he, right?
As far as we know, yeah.
Chief. So he is correct when he says that their investigation, however he phrased it, is just beginning, or now it's really going to get going. That's what always happens in a murder investigation. Once an arrest is made, then the investigation itself, that's where it takes off. So it's going to be interesting to see when they do, because it will be an eventuality. They will release the name of the person and so forth and so on. But that person was arrested outside of Detroit. Did you just say Kalamazoo?
They were arrested in Kalamazoo. Yes.
How far is that from Detroit? I have no idea.
I don't know. I have no idea.
So, and I would have to believe it's hard to make an arrest it'll depend on where they made the arrest. I mean, did they go to a house in a neighborhood? Did they get him on a traffic stop? Did they find him walking down the street, singing doo-wah ditty? I mean, what were the circumstances of the arrest? And this person's got to be somewhere. I'm sure I'm presuming he was taken into custody and he was put in the county jail there at Kalamazoo. And then detectives from Detroit went and picked him up and brought him back. So whoever this person is, they're documented in two different places as to who they are and what they were arrested for. It would be, I mean, I guess you could do it. It's just going to be tough to, especially making an arrest in another city, another county, having to process them through there, unless the detectives from Detroit went directly there and arrested the guy and brought him directly back. So there's a lot of ways this thing could have all happened. I'm impressed that they've been able to keep the identity of this person, this suspect, under wraps for this long. So yeah. It will be interesting to see who it is, and the circumstances, at least what I've read. I believe she was killed outside her house in like her driveway or front garage.
It's interesting. They authorities say that they believe she was attacked inside her home, and then she stumbled out before collapsing on the sidewalk. Yes.
So then you have all those questions. Excuse me. You have all those questions, right? Was there forced entry? If there was no forced entry, then the presumption is that she knew her attacker. Then you're going to do a canvass of that neighborhood. Who was seen coming in and out of her house? Was anybody seen? There may be no witnesses to it. Is there any video available? So forth and so on. So, and the fact that they've made an arrest, when did this happen? It was like a couple of weeks ago, right?
The arrest was fairly recent, in the last week, I want to say.
No, I'm talking about the actual.
Oh, yeah, this happened a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago. Saturday, October 21st.
21st?
October 21st was when she was found.
So it's been what, 2.5 weeks, something like that?
Yeah.
I am pretty certain they were on whoever this person is pretty quick. And that's what's facilitated this arrest, because you've got to put things together. These things don't happen in a vacuum. So it will be interesting. I'm very interested to see, as I'm sure everybody else is. But from an investigative standpoint, I'm very interested to see who the suspect turns out to be. And then that's going to, of course, obviously, that will answer a lot of questions. And but I am impressed with the fact that they've been able to keep a lid on this thing. And the chief is right. It does protect the investigation, and that has to be done. We live in this fast food world, right, where everybody's expectation is that we need to know this stuff right now. We should have this right now, blah, 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 blah. And I can tell you, in an investigation like that, the detectives are going to be methodical, they're going to be deliberate, and they're going to hold that stuff close to the vest until the time is right to let the public know this is who we have, these are the circumstances, and then they move forward to a possible prosecution. So very interesting case, though. Very interesting.
Very
Especially
interesting.
with all the international dynamics that are going on right now.
Yeah, and we're not done with it quite yet. Tolly, is there any news in the Rachel Morin case? Glad you asked. I just been in touch, very close touch with the family. Patty Morin, the mother, is going to come on the show very soon as next week. They've got some news, nothing about catching a suspect, but some strategies that they are trying. Scott Duffy is well informed on this case. I'm going to bring Scott on with Rachel Morin's mother, Patty Morin, and possibly her brother Michael or Nate Morin when we are ready to bring them on. I will let you know at Podcast SDS on Twitter. I also, shameless plug, I was asked to do True Crime Daily, the sidebar, with the great Josh Ritter, who's sometimes the best guest. And that episode will be out Tuesday morning. Sunday night, we're efforting, as they say in the news business, to do a Moscow Murders 1 year later, a special, and trying to get a lineup of some best guests for you. I want to stay away from the evildoer on that one and just talk about the victims and what it's like to be in Moscow a year later. So look for that Sunday evening, probably 7:00. And my final question, Scott Duffy, what happens? This is what I was thinking about while Phil was talking. What happens to your beach house in the winter? Do you still go?
No, it is seasonal. So I open it up in April and close it right at the end of October. So it's winterized and it will,
do you
remain
shut
alone.
the pipe? Do you shut the
winter
pipes
months.
off? Do you turn the pipes off
Yeah.
and things of that nature?
Mhm.
You do.
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry to
Will
hear
it be
that.
open when I'm up there in April next year, Scott?
It will be.
All right. Am I going
Yeah.
to be
And
able
Yeah.
to see it?
Are you bringing the Ferrari?
Well, I don't know. I guess I could. I guess I could drive all the way to, I could do it. I could sure do it.
How long
But
would
it
it
will
take you
be
to
open.
drive the Ferrari from Houston to the Philadelphia area, Fil Waters? Would you be going 120 in the HOV lane?
When I could.
Uh,
You gotta give these cars a Ferrari tune-up. I mean, they love to be driven. So, there you go.
Oh, look at this. Kalamazoo is about 3 hours from Detroit, always answering Phil's
Okay.
questions. Scott
Thank
Duffy, you're involved here because,
Mhm.
by the way, again, they say that this attack of Samantha Wall in the Detroit area happened back on October 21st, that the attack actually happened inside the house and then she stumbled out, which makes you wonder, as Phil just said, did she know the person? Someone else said a stabbing is very personal. We don't know yet. Scott Duffy, the Detroit police chief, James White, said at a press conference that his police department is working in partnership with the FBI and Michigan State Police, and they've already identified persons of interest. I guess that came out prior to this arrest. And again, no evidence of a hate crime. But what would the FBI be doing in this particular situation? Why are they called in?
I would imagine, especially because of the whole situation in Israel and a high profile Jewish woman in Michigan, you can make logical assumptions that this could have been an act of terror, a hate crime, etc., all wrapped in. And so thereby I see bringing in the FBI sooner than later. So they could have been brought in on that nexus. And so that's, and as you talked about, and I know that this is Phil's favorite word, persons of interest, potential suspects. They're all suspects. So that's the only thing I could think of. I think there needs to be a high threshold, and it probably exists here, where you can have a person who's been arrested and that identity not disclosed. So thereby, my initial thought is there are others very close to this, where this is a group, this is a conspiracy, one or more, and or two or more, and so thereby releasing this person's identity would really affect the getting the others in custody. And remember, I mean, if the murder weapon is missing, and they want to be able to get evidence, they don't want that whatever evidence could be out there destroyed. So it really takes it's a high threshold to keep that name under the wraps, and so that's where I could see there's imminent arrests, and so but that's why I would see the FBI involved early in this, and then until it starts unfolding that the motive is not terror, it's not hate. It's so that and the FBI can remain in as a resource, providing whatever it can to the investigation.
And it remains a mystery. If the media does its job well, we should have an identity on this person at some point. Andy School says, I'm sorry I was late, but did we thank our veterans today? I'm sure we did. Phil, thanks to all our brave service people. Love you all. We did. Andy School, did your son, as the captain of his basketball team, did they win their game the other night? I told you, I tell my middle daughter, Z-Bugs, if she loses her soccer game, don't bother coming home. The door will be locked. I don't know if you tell your child the same thing, but let us know if they won the game. Real Happy says, Scott looks cold, and then says, like he is cold, I should have said, not like a cold person, but you look like you are cold. Are you cold, Scott?
No, but it is a good hoodie day. It's a good day. I'll wear my typical garb is a hoodie and shorts, regardless, even in the hot days.
Nettie Daniel says, favorite channel, guests and mods. I always wonder what they think if they're tuning in for the first time on a Friday, because it's a little different than the rest of the days. I have another question for you, Scott, that I was thinking about. Has Chi-Chi, the chinchilla, ever been to the beach house? Do you bring Chi-Chi with you?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You do.
He's a good travel companion. Yeah. He has been there. My dog Pearl has not been, because she despises travel. She does not. If she's not on her four paws, she's not happy.
She gets nervous in the car, Scott?
Hates it.
What's she do in the car? What does she do?
Shakes considerably, almost convulsive like, and so they're just all a lot of saliva getting thrown about. So she does not go in the car, except when she needs to.
Yeah, I brought Ethel to the dog park yesterday, and I used to do this with Mabel Rose. May her memory be a blessing. I could almost cry right now. But anyway, I brought Ethel to the dog park. There was a giant German Shepherd. I mean, this was the biggest German Shepherd I've ever seen, and he was just going after Ethel. I never heard Ethel. She was hiding underneath the picnic table, and then finally charged at this German Shepherd. Brought a tear to my eye because she was fighting back. She was squealing like a little piglet, a very high-pitched squeal. The German Shepherd then ran away, and Ethel felt proud that she was able to do it. And then I got home, and she was laying on her back upside down with her tongue hanging out of her mouth. Cinnamon Bear says, the news article, I guess today, is saying that the murder of this rabbi is a domestic incident. That would be very interesting. Would that surprise you or not at all, Fil Waters?
No, I think given the, again, what we talked about is if there's no forced entry, somebody she knew, the knife, that may have been just a weapon of opportunity to whatever the disagreement was, and to whatever that argument got, whatever level it got to. It may be something, picked up a kitchen knife and did the deed. And it's just usually I mean, when knives are used and in those kinds of situations, I mean, it's usually a personal thing. And so I would not be surprised if it's going to be somebody that she's got a prior relationship with.
Yeah, Andy School, who is in the Detroit area, says a friend of mine here in Wayne County is saying that this was not a hate crime surrounding the synagogue president. He implied through knowledge that it was personal, someone attached to her in her private life. So we will soon find out. Rachel Wyatt, the big if only Scott Duffy was single. If only Scott Duffy was single. And that's a big if, because he's not. He's a happily married fella as far as we know. On to the next story. This comes from your Commonwealth, Scott Duffy, and this is a very disturbing story. This is a former Pennsylvania vet tech turned nurse and suspected serial killer. You familiar with this case, Scott?
I am not, so I'm looking forward to it.
So, under her care, 17 patients have died. Her name is Heather Irene Presti. Heather Irene Presti. She was first accused of injecting 3 patients with insulin, killing 2 and injuring a third in November 2022, and later claiming that she felt, quote unquote, bad for their quality of life. Again, 17 patients died in her care. She was arrested last May. This is what I find hard to believe. She was fired from 11 different medical centers, 11, because of complaints of abusive behavior. Do these people not do background checks on their employees? I mean, 11. I'm 54. I haven't worked in 11 places. Now, the COE's worked in 37 places, and she's younger, but that's just a different generation, perhaps. But what do you make of this? This is very sinister, Scott Duffy. This is a woman who swore an oath to take care of people. There have been comparisons to this guy, Charles Cullen, who was a New Jersey nurse. There was a movie made about him called The Good Nurse. Did something very similar. The detective who worked this case said that he thought that she was a budding serial killer. What is your thought on this? That you're going in to get care, you're getting these insulin shots, and she's literally killing you with what is supposed to be health care.
Yeah, and then that as you were explaining it, that's exactly what came to mind, the Charlie Cullen case. And then of course this is nothing new, where you have these, it may come out to be, or might have started to be, this mercy killing type individual, a nurse or a doctor. And it'd be interesting to see what those circumstances are of her traveling to so many different medical facilities. And then of course there's, you're talking about liabilities. You're talking about, do you have many patients that have died in the previous, under suspicious circumstances, that are all going to be revived in different jurisdictions. So it will be, it's there. Of course, there are these privacy laws where you can, yes, you could do backgrounds, but just how much are they going forward? They're looking ultimately for criminal history. And if she has never been charged in anything and she's simply let go, and then of course everybody signs these documents, is the hospital going to be able to get anything? They're not going that far to do an investigation, unfortunately. And so things like this do take place, and they're allowed to fester and take place because of these lack of, inter-medical facilities being able to talk and be able to gather. And it wasn't all that long ago where a teacher who might have been abusing children or suspected in abusing children and is able to travel about. And then, of course, the laws have changed to realize, hey, we have to protect these children. And so thereby, if you have somebody that's traveling states and different schools, there could be an issue. So so very much in the medical field, it's, unfortunately, it comes down to people protecting their business and then letting somebody go and then harm somebody else in the future. So nothing surprises me with what you have said, and it's just going to keep happening again and again when you have people like this. Ultimately, it might have started as a mercy killing, and then, if I remember, with regards to the Charlie episode, where detectives actually got him to confess that it was much more. It started in something, and then, of course, you had you had patients that were dying that had no terminal illness, no suffering in their life, and so then it becomes a power. It becomes just this unfortunately, the sickness where, hey, I just I like it, and so they keep thriving on that power and whatnot in these. So it's unfortunate, but yes, the first I'm hearing of this case, especially in my Commonwealth, is do you know what section?
I don't, but I'll have to look it up, and
Yep.
I will let you
Okay.
know. But it is very disturbing because, again, you're going in for medical care. And by the way, they say that unforced or unneeded insulin shots are incredibly painful to the system. So it's not a pleasant. It's not like getting shot up with heroin or something. It's painful. Ned Smith here, Fil Waters, who has a great sense of humor with his serious tone. She better not have killed any animals. So I told you she was a vet tech. The detective says she's only been a nurse for 5 years. Before that, she was a vet tech, and one of her primary responsibilities was administering anesthesia to animals and also euthanizing animals. Let me tell you something. If this woman, Heather Presti, ever touched my Mabel Rose or Ethel Bug Johnson, I would have her in a headlock within 0.3 seconds, and she would not have been doing what she's doing to humans. Don't dare touch animals. I get fired up, Heather Presti. Don't do it. Fil Waters, she texted her mother on Christmas Day, and this was the text. She was talking about a woman that was under her care. She says, and I quote, "I can't with this lady. She's going to get pillow therapy." 2 days later, this 85-year-old woman was dead. Is there a special place reserved in hell for these people, Fil Waters, assuming she is convicted of these heinous crimes?
Well, the fact that that's where they're headed will be enough, but I'm sure there are probably going to be special places for those types of people. I mean, that's just she's getting off on that kind of stuff. That's another weird event that occurs with a person that has got such a perverted view of life and what brings them gratification. Those stories are always disturbing when they come about, and sometimes these people like her look at the victims as though she's doing them a favor, that they're in whatever degree of being debilitated and all that kind of thing, and they think they're doing them some sort of a favor by removing them, and really that's not their call. They go in there and they perceive themselves as an angel of death, and that they're in there helping them out. And that's a hard mind to even comprehend, to even understand.
Look at Julie Frew. A man in the UK today was given only 330 days community service for kicking a cat repeatedly to death. Phil, I don't even want to broach this subject with you, but God forbid, this woman, Heather Presti, you bring her to the, to the animal. You bring poor Nugget, stubs her toe. You bring her into the clinic in the Big Island. Heather Presti is the vet tech. Next thing you know, poor Nugget, I can't even say these words. Poor Nugget is in a state of rigor mortis. I mean, what would you do? I mean, how would you handle that? I mean, this woman was killing pets.
Well, gosh, with
Did
any
she
of
have
my
to stare down the barrel of your 45 after that?
with any of my pets, a situation like that, somebody would have to provide me some answers that are pretty clear. That's you know, I'm not sure. I know when I had there was an incident about 11 years ago, and my cat, who was it was my cat. He didn't really care for my wife too much, but Satch, and he was named after Joe Satriani, virtuoso guitar player. He was murdered by a couple of Rottweilers on his own driveway. And I found him the next morning, and it was horrible. And so I immediately went into my detective mode, found out where the rots came from, called animal control. They did find them. I told them on the phone, though, that if they didn't come out and find these dogs, that I was going to go out and look for them, and I would dispatch them with my 45. So, but they got out there. They got them in custody, and I said the female, looked to me, because I had seen him that night, and it was really a weird deal. And it was right after an investigation I had completed, and very emotional. And then this thing happens, and I told them that the female looked to me to be the one that was running things. I've been around dogs all my life. My dad used to raise shepherds, German shepherds. So the guy, the male dog, was just kind of like, there. And I told him, I said, you need to put him down once you get him. And so they did put the female down, and they sent the male off 100 miles away to some ranch somewhere. But so yeah, I know how I would respond if something happened to one of my pets, one of my animals, and it looked like it wasn't right.
That's a horrible story. I only laugh because now the staring down of Phil's barrel of his 45 extends to animals as well as humans. Horrific story. Adam Lamparello, are in hospitals equally culpable for allowing people to suffer horribly for months? I saw that happen to my father. It was disgusting. Sorry to hear that, Adam. I went through that. My dad was in the hospital for 8 months. It was brutal to watch. It's very sad just to watch that. Heavy stuff. Two more very quick stories. But first, Scott Duffy, your favorite band. I am not T-Pain, with the perfect comment at the perfect time to alleviate the tense mood. Your favorite band, Scott Duffy.
Okay, we're going to get this started, huh?
I have two horrible mom stories coming your way. We'll do them real quick. But first, your favorite band, Scott.
Scott?
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking. I can't. I like a lot, but I will say one that I'm dedicated to seeing every year in my hometown, and so I go, is Philadelphia homegrown Hooters.
You mentioned that, by the way. You did mention.
I saw them this past weekend.
Did, and I think I'm 99% sure that they played at my college when I was in college. Is that possible? They've been around that long?
Yes. And they joke about that. They're up there in age, and so they joke about how they all started it at playing for high school in high school gyms. Yep. So I could believe that.
That's interesting. Fil Waters, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you the same question as posed by I Am Not T-Pain. Your favorite band. Adam Lamparello says Iron Maiden. I'm a huge AC/DC fan. I got to say, I love
Iron
AC/DC.
Maiden. No, I will put it this way. I have floor tickets right in front of the stage at the Eagles' final farewell tour in February.
Upcoming February. Is that upcoming? Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
2024.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, the COE, and we danced in the evening, whatever. I don't know the words to any song. That's I know that song, and they did play at my college. The COE, I can't even say this publicly. I guess my kids don't listen, but she has threatened me with getting my oldest for her first concert, of course, getting her Taylor Swift tickets. And I said, my response was, aren't those really expensive? And her response was, don't worry about it. And there was a big skit with Bill Burr. His wife gives him a lot of crap, and he did this whole thing about how he's become a lot more agreeable later in life. He just says, sure. And so when she said that, I said, sure, sounds great. It's in 2024. Why worry about it now? AC/DC was great. Yeah, why worry about basically mortgaging my home for Taylor Swift tickets if it's not till 2024? I was going to guess the Eagles was Phil's favorite. Eagles, a few people are saying Jimmy Buffett, Phil, that they thought you'd be a big Jimmy Buffett fan.
Well, yeah, I like Jimmy Buffett, but those guys are parrot heads. And no, I like Jimmy Buffett. Yeah, sad to see his passing. He was, he was a good, talented guy. He was a pilot. A talented guy, and I think worth $1 billion or something. So he Margaritaville into quite an empire. But I love Jimmy Buffett music. I'm not a parrot head, but I love his music.
Look at this, Space Coast chiming in on the Taylor Swift. This, of course, is my brother-in-law, otherwise known as the COE's brother. He says, Joel, don't do it. Taylor Swift is so mid. I don't know what that means. Scott Duffy, you have young kids. Do you know what mid means? It's so mid.
No, I was just going to ask you what does that mean?
By the way, huge shout out goes to the COE's sister, Alex, one of my favorite people in the world. She just passed her bar exam, graduated law school, now an official attorney. Huge shout out to Alex, one of my favorite people. One of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. Space Coast sister. Okay, 2 quick last stories. I bring these up for 2 different reasons, but the theme is, Space Coast says mid is mediocre, not good. Interesting because you spell it M-I-D, not med, but and look, Adam Lamparello says Elvis, the best performer ever. Some people would say, look at this. Gretchen says mid, meh, or okay. Mid is meh. Phil, did you know that?
What?
That mid meant like Did you know that? No, obviously not. It's weird how you become. And I don't mean you, Phil.
Are we speaking Hebrew here? What is this? What are we?
It's just weird that I have become my father. Yeah. We've all become our fathers. The Pretenders are good. I'm going to tell you a 9-hour story in 9 seconds right now. I was senior year of high school, maybe 1986. My dad had just bought a brand new Volvo, one of those Volvo Turbo 7. I forget what they were numbers. But anyway, it was a big, square, bulky car. And we had tickets to see the Smithereens, Squeeze, and someone else at the Meadowlands. I don't know why I'm telling this story right now, but we're talking about bands at the Meadowlands, which is now whatever they call it, where the Giants play football. I go with my 3 friends, Rob Crozier, Howie, and Mike Littman. Steve Isakoff was there too. I driving back. It's summertime, biggest rainstorm in the history of the world. It was like Noah's Ark times 10. I'm with like 4 of my bonehead high school friends. They say to me, we get off the turnpike, which was a miracle. We're now on Route 27. Cars are submerged, like 5 feet of water in the roadway. My idiot friends say, floor it. I floor it. We get about halfway through. Everything starts blinking. Car turns off. It starts floating. My friends all are hysterically laughing. I'm in my dad's brand new Volvo. This is 1986. I am like, holy crap. I get out. The car's literally off the ground. It was floating. My parents had a very bad habit of turning. This was before cell phones. They would just unplug their phone, and I couldn't reach them. Someone else's parents came. Eventually, someone knocked on my parents' door. My mom comes. My dad was, you have to know my dad is a character. He's like, I'm not dealing with this. Long story short, eventually my mother comes. I have a little bit of a, believe it or not, when I am pushed to the limit, I have a little bit of I can become a hothead, I guess is a good word for it. We're now, New Jersey State Troopers are there. I'm with my mother, and he does something that I didn't like, and I snapped at him, and he then spun me around as a junior in high school and threatened to handcuff me. That was the closest I've ever been. Carmela stepped in, said something to him, calmed him down. Everything was abated. We got home. I had pails, literally pails, and I was pouring water out of my dad's Volvo. The next day, my dad found out, and he wasn't happy, and that was our brand new car. It seemed to ride fine a few weeks after that, and that is my 9-hour story in a little over 9 seconds. Last two stories. I'm out of breath. I need to be on oxygen. This mom, Fil Waters, why does this happen? She shot and killed her 2 young children in Kentucky. A witness found this. The boys suffered because they died later at the hospital. At this time, police say it appears all parties in relation to this incident have been accounted for. The mother was previously in jail for drug possession. I'm trying to find her name here. I'm trying to find the boys were 6 and 9 years old. I don't see the mother's name anywhere here. The police officer said, whether you think it's mental illness, just pure evil, a combination of both, it could be substance abuse, any combination thereof. Pick your poison. None of it is good. The result is all horrific. Why, Phil, why do we hear about these parents? We did a story like this a few months ago. I mean, she shot and killed her very own children. Is there just too much stress in the world? I mean, what brings you to that point? I mean, I thought about this with the Adelsons. The Adelsons, the mother had a son that's a surgeon, a son who's a periodontist, a daughter who's a lawyer, and it was still not enough. She needed her kids to move to Miami from Tallahassee, and she puts a hit up. Why do people do this, Fil Waters?
Well, the answer is there's evil in the world. And we as a culture in the United States has devalued life to a degree that when someone comes to a crossroads like this, and whatever's going on in their head or whatever is influencing them to do something like this, to carry out this act of evil. And I'm not, the mental illness thing and all that. I mean, we're going to get all these, that'll get them going. They're all going to come. It's mental illness, all this. And look, the fact of the matter is there is good and evil in the world. It's black and white. There's right and wrong. And we as a culture, as a people in this country have life means nothing. It means nothing. And so this, again, whatever the factors are that drives a person like this to kill her own children, murder her own children, that's where it comes from. So it's inconceivable to me that someone could do this, but it happens. And it's happened throughout history, throughout time. And now we're seeing it more prevalent, I think, with these children being killed, infanticide. I've said on here before, we made every baby death in the city of Houston that wasn't a hospital death with no signs of abuse. I've made death scenes where children were murdered by their parents. I'm just telling you, it's out there. It's evil. That's all it is. And these are all, again, I said it a couple of weeks ago, these are problems of the heart and the head. And until those get resolved, we will continue to see events like this unfold.
That's one I cannot wrap my head around. Well, two, killing animals and killing your children. I just can't wrap my head around it. Julie Frew, Bon Jovi, straight out of Sayreville, New Jersey. Here's a fact that's going to blow people's mind. The internet is going to explode right now. Scott Duffy, you ready for this? And this is true. 100%. You can ask her. John Bon Jovi's father used to style Carm's hair. He was a hairstylist. Look at that. It comes full circle. Favorite band, John Bon Jovi. John Bon Jovi's father styled Carm's hair. She used to go, I think it was in Sayreville, where he had a hair salon. Don't think he needs to cut hair anymore. I hope he's still with us, but it's one of the reasons Carm looks so beautiful. John Bon Jovi's father. Small world. Final story. This one actually really surprised me too, Scott Duffy. Her name is Shannon O'Connor from Los Gatos, California. She's been dubbed the party mom. She pleaded not guilty this past Monday to 63 counts, including 20 felonies and 40 misdemeanors. She was supplying alcohol to minors and encouraging them to have sex at parties that she held in her $5 million home. It was a multi-million-dollar home. New charges include felony sexual assault. She threw 6 parties for her son and friends in this $5 million mansion over an 11-month period of time. One child was left unconscious with broken bones. She supplied things like vodka, Fireball whiskey, and condoms. At one point, she told a 14-year-old to go into a room with a 14-year-old girl and lock them in there. At one point, they also rented a cottage, which had $9,000 in damages. She used social media apps to organize all this. And again, at one point, gave a condom, at another point, I should say, gave a condom to a young, intoxicated boy and, quote unquote, pushed him into a bedroom with a drunk 14-year-old girl. The girl was afraid, ran, and locked herself inside a bathroom. What is going on here, Scott Duffy? Phil is shaking his head. I mean, what is going, Scott, you have 4 kids. What is going on? I mean, talk to me about the pathology. I know you're an FBI agent, not a therapist. What's going on in this woman's head? She's 40 something years old, by the way, 49.
Yeah. Did she have children? Was she entertaining?
Yeah. Her son was part of this.
Yeah.
She wanted her son to participate. Yes.
Yeah. Good role model.
This is why I love Ned Smith. He said Milli Vanilli. This is why.
Yeah, Milli Vanilli. Go ahead. And you know, I will tell you, I've been to Los Gatos a few times. I do have relatives there. What a beautiful mountain community. And so but I don't think she was there when I was there. It's I don't know what it's
where is Los Gatos? Where is that? Is it closer to San Francisco or is it LA?
Yeah, it's just outside San Francisco. I don't remember if it's north, south, west, but beautiful community. I would fly into San Francisco and then rent a car and I was just as my aunt was at the top of a mountain, I would be like just afraid driving because it's not anything like I was used to. Very, very narrow, windy, fast roads. But aside from that, this, you know what, it's just horrible with what this person is doing and the fact that she had to interject alcohol. She's, there's no different. There's with regards to a pedophile or somebody who's causing harm, abusing children, in any of the many ways. She is absolutely doing that, and she's using alcohol as the way to lower their inhibitions and whatnot. So yeah, she is absolutely she has destroyed these lives, and for her own, as Phil has said, for their own sick gratifications. She is absolutely, that's just that. For what? There's something missing in her life, and now she's destroyed other teenagers, whatever, trying to relive a childhood she didn't have. I'm not sure, but she's done great harm.
Abby Tahaha ha 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 says, "Hi, I said hi, Phil. She had sent a super sticker.
Ah,
This is especially for you, Phil. Especially
hello,
for Phil.
Abby. Hello, Abby. Good to see you, dear.
Phil, and we'll finish it off with this. You know, Scott Duffy said something very brilliant, which doesn't surprise me as having the investigative mind that he has. He said this is no different than pedophilia.
In that
She was,
sultry voice.
yes, she was that soothing, sultry voice. She was basically getting off in a weird sexual way, I think, by having her kid engage
Sure
in
she
these
was.
sex parties. How depraved is this, Fil Waters? And is this another example of evil in the world? And should this woman, as my questions continue to flow, in your opinion, face the full arm of the law here?
Oh, whatever offenses, multiple offenses that she's committed, I hope they stack them, and I hope she spends the next several years, decades in prison where she belongs, and she can have her little whoop whoop parties there. I just that is disgusting. She's there's no telling how many young lives that she has at this point. You know, and these at this point in a kid's life, these teenage years, we all know we went through them, and those are the years that are the struggle, right? And you're trying to figure out which direction you're headed, and so forth and so on. So there's no telling how many lives she has impacted in such a way that's going to cause such confusion for those kids, and there may be some of it that lasts the rest of their lives. So she's disgusting. She's an idiot, and she has, to her own degree, in that just hedonistic, evil way. As I hope she pays a severe price for what she's done to these kids.
Well said. Jan was at an Eagles concert in Tokyo, March 5th, 2011. 6 days later, earthquake, that infamous tsunami, meltdown, things forever changed here in Japan. Glad that you survived. I have a very simple, quick, final question / thought just in hearing this mother destroying a future generation. Phil, do you ever sit back and think about the the old expression, generations come and go, from dust we come to dust we go? Do you ever contemplate this, especially now, a little bit later in life? Do you ever think, at one point you're going to leave this earth? I wanted to keep it light for the end, that you're going to leave this earth, that your children will be here, then those children will leave. These are things that I think about on the daily, as the kids say. It's a very strange concept. I have no idea where I'm going with this, other than these are the sorts of things that I think about. And it's strange. We're here, but for a fleeting moment, Fil Waters. Does that make you nervous? Does it give you reason to live your life fully? Your thoughts?
Well, and of course, here we are again. This will. I'm already hearing panties wadding even before I speak. Look, everybody knows I'm a Christ follower. Everybody knows that I believe and know that there is a plan for each one of us, that God created each one of us. He knew us all before we were even in the womb. And he has guaranteed us an eternity with him through belief in his son who sacrificed himself on that cross and then defeated death. So in terms of being worried, I look at things from a perspective of knowing what the truth is, and that's with a capital T and a small t. And so what I concern myself with is, as far as my children go and so forth and so on, they are not in the same boat that I'm in. Excuse me. And I pray for them every day that will change. And so, I pray for all those friends of mine. I pray for everyone, that the haters and the people that are supportive. So that's a gift of the gift of salvation is free for all people. And he died on that cross for all people, not just believers. And so, to answer your question, the things I see going on today, I believe we are living in biblical times. And so I've read the end of the book, and we win, those who believe. So it's disturbing, but to me, and I'm just talking about me, it's very interesting to watch these things unfold, given what I know about the history of man and the biblical history. And so it's a weird word to use, but it's exciting. And I can just tell you, at the end of this, at some point in time, everyone on the face of this planet, all knees are going to bow and acknowledge who he is. So my view is that I would rather believe in a risen Savior and die, because we're not guaranteed the next minute. So I would rather believe in a risen Savior and die and find out there's not one, than to be stubborn and prideful and believe there's not a risen Savior and then die and find out there is one. So I'll close on that note.
Frankie Figs, I am fully wadded, ruthless, wadded panties. Abby Tahaha, put down your sippy cups. Go, Phil, go. Scott Duffy, today you get the last word on a very sort of, what is the word I am looking for? Surface level
day.
Yes,
Interesting
and
day.
this is a very surface level discussion, but your thoughts on the changing of generations, the passing and going of time, the fact that we are here for but a fleeting moment. Your final thoughts on all this, Scott Duffy.
Yeah, I second all of what Phil eloquently said, and it's life, right? And you choose that life, and we Phil and I have seen the I'm not so sure we can say the worst of the worst, because every time you say that, then you see something or hear something. But we've
Scott, do you wake up and say to yourself, this could be it? I could get hit by a Mack truck today. I'm going to live life to the fullest. Or do you say, wow, I could die. I'm so scared. And you crawl into a hole. Do you seize life because you know it is so fleeting?
Have to. I've lived that way. And yeah, sure. There's natural fear, but I've chosen to believe. I have to believe it's something that that's just a part of my life, and I've seen, it's like I've seen plenty of evidence to if I want to live otherwise, but not to get dark, but it is something I think that's been a part of my life. But at 5 years old, as a young boy, to see such a popular person in my life, my father, who laid in state and was a very popular teacher, not only for me as a father, but a very popular person in the city that I grew up in. And then to see him dead at such a young age. So it's hard not to carry that into adulthood, to say, wow, somebody who is dead at the age of 37 from natural causes could be, who had a whole life in front of him as
Was he in law enforcement, Scott? I'm sorry.
He was not. He was a teacher. He was a
Oh,
teacher.
Oh, wow.
And a very, very popular teacher, as I've seen letters and cards over the years of his young students saying what's, such a loss. So it's something that I've carried through my whole life, to think that, was it cut short? I don't think so. It was his time. And I think from everything I've learned about him since then, from friends, family, whatnot, is that he did live to the fullest. And so thereby he lived his life. And I'm glad to be still around. It is. But yeah, life should be lived as if tomorrow will no longer be here, right? That's a good way to live.
Beautifully
and to live
said.
justly. To live justly.
Beautifully said. Beautiful way to end the week. We keep things light here at STS. Ned Smith says Genesis is a fabulous band and Ruthless. Now a friend of the show. We've all had a blast. Best guest, Mods family. STS Nation rocks. A reminder, we are efforting a special Moscow 1 year later for Sunday night. Follow me at Podcast STS for the times. And then we're going to be following future trials. And we're working on a special event with Fil and Scott that we're going to get to. And we'll let you know what that is one of these days. Until then, love you, America. Love you, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia and Delaware and Houston, Texas, the Woodlands, the Big Island, Bangladesh, Tasmania, and Israel.